Hi, Andrew from SACS, and welcome to video number 9 in our 11 video sequence on how to create the optimum corporate culture. In this one, we'll be talking about a technique to optimize behavior. So those of you who've watched the earlier videos will have heard me saying some very uncomplimentary things about mission, vision, values, how whilst they can be expensive and difficult things to build, they really don't have much impact on corporate culture whatsoever. So here's an alternative approach. This is a thing called group-generated behavior protocols. A good thing about group-generated behavior protocols is that they can be built really quickly. And in fact, if you've got a team of 20 people, you can usually create this within an hour or two by doing it as a group activity. And if you do this group activity, most people will say, hey, that was really interesting, and they find that it builds corporate culture. They hear their colleagues' interests and they hear their colleagues' views on these matters. It can be a really good team building activity. And so here's how you do it. You would get the entire group of employees together, ask each individual to privately write between 5 words and phrases to describe the ideal vision of the team that they belong to, and then ask them to discuss the words and phrases with colleagues. Ask everybody to voice out their words and phrases, write them on a whiteboard, and when you do that, you should be able to distill up to 7 themes which define the ideal team. Now, how that works is that as people create their idea about, what this team is going to be like, we're going to be respected by colleagues, we're going to be the sort of team that achieves our goals, we're going to have high levels of cohesion, we'll have fun, all of that stuff. When you've got all those words and phrases and a kind of a word cloud on a board, and the board could be a digital board or a physical board, you can usually distill themes. And we say 7 themes as a maximum is a good number of themes. If you've got more than that, maybe you're getting too micro. But one of the things that's a really good idea is that once you've got those themes, what you can do is ask people to rate out of 10 how close they think the team is right now to that ideal. So, okay, we've got these 7 themes, and you're asking them to generate one number, not 7 numbers if you've got 7 themes. Some teams will write 7 numbers and average them, that's fine. But the point is that good teams tend to have a score of 7 or above. Now, this is a great and simple way of identifying the quality of the corporate culture of that team by getting people to rate how close they are to that ideal corporate culture. So that number, and you'll quite often, if you do this, you might get a number of 3 or 4 or something like that, or if it's a really good team, you might get a 7 or an 8 or even a 9 or something like that. But the point is, the next thing you do is you get people to rate where they want to be in 6 months' time. And so the concept of this, if you want to improve corporate culture, this is a really practical way of saying, here's where we are now, here's where we want to be in 6 months' time. And you do that by getting each person to rate where they want to be in 6 months' time. And then you average that rating. And you've averaged the ratings of where we are right now. And that's the journey. So we're a 5 right now, and we want to be an 8 in 6 months' time. So the rest of the exercise is to identify the behaviours that will help us to do that. Now, group-generated behaviour protocols define specific observable behaviours. We attend our meetings on time. They can define above-the-line behaviour, and above-the-line behaviour is behaviours that we want to see, and maybe below the line as well. So when we run these things for organisations, we tend to do them on a voting process, a process called facilitative leadership, where we get the team to develop these behaviours and then vote for them. And quite often it identifies, let's say, 10 to 12 desirable behaviours. Now, these can be quite different team by team in your organisation, and as I've mentioned in earlier videos, that can be quite appropriate. So are the ideal behaviours of your in-house accountants the same as your customer service people? And the important thing about all of that is if you've got behaviours that are relevant to the particular team, that can be particularly powerful in causing them to relate to them, particularly if you've generated it from within that team. And finally, these values therefore tend to be extremely proximal. Proximal means people know where they came from, they relate to them, and also they can be refreshed regularly as the organisation changes. So once you've created these group-generated behaviour protocol, you can adopt those as your core behaviours. Accountability, leaders reward people on them, leaders promote people on them, leaders redirect people when they don't comply with them. And it also gives rise to the role of peers. And what we mean by that is that when you have a clear group-generated behaviour protocol that's been voted up from within the group of employees, what that can do is it can encourage people to give each other congratulations and or guidance when things need to improve. And so that's a really good way of causing people to own behaviours. Conscious elevation of behaviours in everybody's mind is a really good way of improving local corporate culture. Now, if you want more good behaviours and less bad behaviours, this is a good way of doing it. Then, of course, you have to find a way of keeping them alive. So you could maybe make them into 360-degree feedback items in order to measure individual contribution to them. And SACS has done this for many organisations, where the team generates the behaviours and votes for the ones that they think are most important, and then we will turn them into 360-degree feedback items. I mean, that's a really practical way of doing 360-degree feedback and very tailored to each team. You may keep them alive through communication. Use them in your hiring practice. So you send people a what we stand for statement, which is the list of behaviours, when you're hiring. And so they see, okay, so this is what this team stands for. That's very attractive, by the way, for many employees. I'm going to an organisation or to a team that knows what it stands for. You can also do things like have a couple of behaviours a month to focus on. An approach that we've also found to be successful is a thing called critical friend. So critical friend is where you rotate a role of being a critical friend. That's an employee of this team. And you change that each time you have a meeting. So if you have a meeting every week or every 2 weeks, you rotate the critical friend. And the role of the critical friend is to congratulate people on the behaviours that are positive behaviours that they've agreed on through the group-generated behaviour protocol and which happened in that meeting. And also, if they notice that certain behaviours were less positive, it's an opportunity to say, hey, maybe next time we can tackle this in a way that's consistent with the behaviours that we've identified. So there are some ideas about how to create group-generated behaviour protocols and what to do with them. But group-generated behaviour protocols can be demonstrated to improve behaviours of individuals quite markedly and quite quickly. It's a worthwhile thing to do. The next video in this sequence will be focused on leadership of corporate culture. How can we sponsor our leaders to become better at creating the corporate culture that we're seeking within our organisation? So if this content is of use to you, don't hesitate to like and subscribe.